Welcome to the session this morning. Our topic is the role of virtual healthcare after the pandemic. My name is Singaram. I'm the founder of Naiyavud and also Startup Podium. I've created the whole program, and I have this morning a very energetic panel from all around the globe. We have from Germany, Thailand, Singapore, Germany, and also India. So they will share with you, and the host for the session is going to be Sonja. So she's a managing partner and she works with lots of startups, and she and I work quite a bit together in some of these programs. We just did it too. So it looks like she has to get up early in the morning. I have to stay late to do these programs together with a time difference, which is amazing. So it's great. So I'm going to hand over to Sonja. She will take over and introduce the panel. I will come back 5 minutes before you have to end to tell you to stop. Okay, so go for it. Over to you.
Thank you, Muthu, for the kind introduction and welcome all together. And indeed, it's very early in the morning. I had to get up at 5 in the morning today. So, but for this exciting session, I'm really looking forward to now. We have a great round of speakers, and the topic of our session will be the role of virtual healthcare after the pandemic. And how does healthcare will look like in the future? COVID-19 and the social distancing practices have already resulted in a huge increase in telemedicine, and health providers are adopting new technology to meet the growing demand also for risk-free, convenient, and also cost-effective access to care. And welcome to our new normal. And what will be the new normal after the pandemic? This will be the topic of our exciting session. And we have 3 startups with us and 3 industry speakers. And together we will deep dive into virtual healthcare. And here is our honorable round of speakers, startups and ladies first, and then I will introduce you to the industry speakers. So the first speaker will be Sona Chandra. She is the founder of a new health startup. She will then tell us in a second. And she is the member of the advisory board of Oshi Health. And she has a background in biomedical engineering and worked with large international pharmaceutical and medical device companies. We also have Panusith Chomanan with us, the CEO and co-founder of Ever Medical Technologies. We have Sirish Singaram, the founder of Swasth with us, and Dr. Jootar, the founder of the More Corporation. Sajit Kumar, he is the director of the commercial IT of AstraZeneca, and Dr. Naiyavud Wongkomet, he's the co-founder and chief operating officer of Silicon Craft Technology from Taiwan. But now I want to start with Sona, and can you give a short introduction about yourself and also about the company you are, the 2 companies I have to say, so the new health startup you are into and Oshi Health. So the stage is yours now.
Thanks, Sonia. I really appreciate that. So I'm going to try to share my screen to share a few slides. Can you guys see my screen? I hope that's a yes. So just to give you guys a little bit of background, Sonia did a great job giving kind of the introduction, but my background is in biomedical engineering, and I really launched my career in digital health working for Takeda Pharmaceuticals on their digital health incubation and venture investment team, where I founded the first of Takeda's internally incubated startup companies called Oshi Health. Oshi sort of initially started as a remote monitoring platform for patients with inflammatory bowel diseases, so ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, where really the core premise of the product was that we found that by combining patient-reported outcome data with data from an at-home stool test that measured for a specific inflammatory marker called calprotectin, that we could monitor patient disease activity over time and enable a timely and personalized intervention when we recognized the worsening of their condition. And we found that in clinical studies, this model was able to reduce flare duration from an average of 77 days to 18 days. So we got some really amazing results. And as we were going to market with that platform, we sort of caught wind of a number of key trends in the market that made us want to rethink our strategy. So namely, we got a lot of pull and interest from the broader GI community. So as we were sort of getting a deeper understanding of the workflows within a gastroenterology context, as well as the patient journey and the patient experience, we sort of realized that there were significant inefficiencies and gaps in the current standard of care as it relates to managing patients with digestive health conditions. So the example I like to point out is irritable bowel syndrome. So IBS is a very highly prevalent condition impacting something like 18% of the US population. And you'll see similar prevalencies globally as well. The challenge with IBS is that it's a functional GI condition, which means that by definition, you wouldn't find anything structurally abnormal about the patient's body. So if you were to do an endoscopy or colonoscopy, there wouldn't be anything structurally weird about it. But yet these people are still sort of suffering with very debilitating symptoms that are impacting their quality of life. And so what happens is they will often go to their general practitioner, and their GP will sort of be like, you're just having tummy pains, go home, eat some fiber, you're fine. And so these people are sort of left without anywhere to turn to for real access to care and help. At the same time, we realized that there were significant kind of bodies of research that were showing a lot of impact of dietary interventions and mental health interventions on improving the quality of life and symptoms in that patient population. But we realized that access to that kind of care was rather limited to large academic medical settings in urban populations. So we kind of realized that this limited access to care was resulting in all sorts of negative health outcomes for patients, including really unnecessarily high costs, as well as a generally poor patient experience and poor patient outcomes. And so we decided to sort of pivot our model to becoming a virtual provider practice, where we actually brought clinicians on board our platform, gastroenterologists, psychologists, health coaches, dietitians, nurse practitioners. We trained them on proprietary clinical protocols, really addressing those inefficiencies in care, and enabled access to that specialized interdisciplinary practice unit through a telemedicine solution. We recently launched earlier this year in the US and have closed an additional funding round that is enabling us to sort of scale quite broadly. After closing a Series A funding round, I sort of felt like that was a great milestone for me to kind of take a step back from my role as an operator, join the advisory board, and embark on my next venture. So over the last few months, I've been working on a concept addressing opportunities to basically bring nutrition and dietary interventions to the core sort of focus as a part of treatment in inpatient settings to address the high prevalence of malnutrition in hospitalized patients. But I think that, my experience at Oshi and the work that we've done from a virtual care setting really we've seen that it's really sort of moved the needle in terms of addressing a lot of the problems and pain points that were experienced in that patient population. So that's just kind of a little bit about me and my background.
Thank you very much, Sona. And you also wanted to tell us a little bit about your news. So you introduced now to us to Oshi Healthcare. So and you have a new activity going on. So it would be really interesting to also learn more about this.
Sure, happy to. So I'm now working with a venture capital fund based here in Berlin, who are investing in me to launch a new healthcare technology venture. With my background at Oshi, I sort of saw firsthand how the power that dietary interventions can really have on patient outcomes. But I was also very shocked that in a disease area like GI, it seems quite obvious that the food that you eat has a core relationship with the health of your gut, that you would think that dietary interventions were a pretty core part of care. I was very surprised to learn that they are often not. And so I started, this kind of inspired me to want to look a little bit more into the space and sort of understand where dietary care is currently lacking and where there's an opportunity to kind of fill that need. So I started to reflect on my personal experiences, and I realized that my grandmother suffers from what I now know is called anorexia of aging, where as she's gotten older, she's sort of lost her joy of eating, her appetite for food, and that's sort of, we can clearly see with our own eyes the impact that that's had on her overall health. She's gotten weaker, her muscles have started to waste, etc. And so I got inspired to start looking into this space. And I was really shocked to learn that malnutrition is actually a very highly prevalent condition, even in the Western world, particularly in elderly patients, but also in various care settings, like sort of the inpatient hospitalized setting. So something like 40 to 50% of patients who are admitted into a hospital are actually malnourished. And 38% of non-malnourished patients develop some sort of nutritional deficiency during their stay at the hospital. At the same time, there's very well-established correlations between malnutrition and negative health outcomes, including things like an increased length of stay, increased rate of readmission, and just all sorts of negative health outcomes. So I'm looking to create a personalized nutrition platform that can address that very complex issue.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. So we will later on also discuss in our round, but now I want to I want to follow up to the next speaker, and this is Panusith Chomanan. I hope I have pronounced it correctly, and he is the co-founder of Ever Medical Technologies. Ever Medical Technologies is a social enterprise startup, tries to give back the patients the ownership of their health data. So it is already, and so you're already using it in Samut Prakan in Thailand, and you will now tell us more about this for about 2.4 million patients. So we are really looking forward now to your short presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
Data
Thank
is yours. You already have opened your presentation. Wonderful.
Yes. So thank you for the introduction. So I'm Panusith Chomanan, or you can just call me Plan as well. I co-founded Ever Medical Technologies, where the only thing that we aim to do is to unlock the healthcare data and give it back to patients. Meanwhile, if we use forefront technologies and transparent technologies like blockchain, we can also do things like research rightfully and transparently for the patients and for the medical research as well, coming in and both inside the system itself. So we are a company which started around 3 years ago, where our main focus is in creating a better healthcare system for inter-hospital data exchanges, and then give this data back to the patients. And so we launched in Samut Prakan province of Thailand, and now we're expanding to 2 more provinces. But we also work with medical school here as well to basically dig that data up from the grounds and rightfully structure it, and then have it linked to each other network that using blockchain and using a way that they can trace, track, and also give right and collect consent from the patient themselves as well to empower research. So actually our company is what was started from the UK, and then we bring it back to Thailand, me, myself being Thai, and we want to basically, as a social enterprise, we also want to help developing economies or developing countries with backward or mixed case healthcare system. And so we work with identities like UN IDEA, work with NASA, work with UC Berkeley, blockchain cohorts, and work with Thai Public Health to basically try to spin up a really great system that is resilient, that is future-looking, and that will also allow for medical research, data research, AI research, and more as well. So currently we are expanding to the US. We have an office in the UK, and our co-founder is Dr. Jose More. My main co-founder, Dr. Jose More, is in the US. We are working with NASA BSA to implement some of our data exchange mesh in the hospital there as well, and basically trying to get population health up and running in different regions to help protect against COVID, empower things like telemedicine to make it more powerful, because right now there's no data syncing up to any doctors at all. Every time you see a new patient, you don't see any of their journey. You see it from a single hospital database on no data at all. So all of these things can be linked up, can be given back to the patients rightfully, and hopefully in the near 5 to 10 years, we can actually give it all back to the patients in a form of decentralized database ownership as well. So using decentralized technologies like IPFS with all the other things to actually make patients own their own healthcare. So that's mainly our aim in the next 5 to 10 years. We have already produced a lot of products, a lot of AI, and having it being used in the US, in Thailand, and hopefully right now we just opened our UK office, so we are trying to expand our market to the UK as well. All in all, like with all the transparency, with all the trustlessness per se of our technologies, allowing for a full trusting system that you don't have to trust us, but you can trust in the technologies and in all the immutableness and all the trustlessness of our system. So this is a simple chart showing what we did for some Pragan provinces. Basically, we link up every single data points across every single hospital and care touch point in the province. So let's say if you go to a PCC, a primary care cluster, or a small clinics within the province, if it's a public clinics. In Thailand, we have a universal coverage model, so a patients can go to almost anywhere, like a local GP in the UK. So let's say if you go to a local GP and then you get diagnostic there. Previously, you can't really sync your data up to the next local community hospital, and this caused a huge problem in terms of referral, doctor not seeing, MDs not seeing the patient's data. They are missing some markers in the patient's diagnosis. For example, like if you go to local clinics and then you find some markers in terms of, like, let's say you smoke cigarettes or you have some symptoms. If the doctors in the local community hospital or the specialized hospital can't do that, it'll be really hard for them to come up with a treatment plan for that specific patients. So what we do is we link off these things up and then empower all these exchanges, including the billing and payment side as well. So in terms of payment between the hospital and the insurer or the public insurer, we also link all these things up, because right now you can see all the data movement in a trustable manners. So you can do billing, you can do referral, or you can do telemedicine, or you can also create a really holistic views of an AI module as well, using the phenotypic data we collect. But all of these phenotypic data are kept using a full consent by patients. So actually patients see every single movement of their health data, which doctor is seeing this or that, or seeing that data right now, who have the consent to view the data right now as well. So we believe that we have already cut the re-diagnosis cost of the province by more than 30% per year. And the wasteful times come from basically doctors ordering lab tests and more, and then they have to wait for it inside the hospital, and they have to wait for that lab test, and so on and so forth. And we also have reduced the billing cost between hospitals as well, in terms of repayment between hospital and so on. Next year, we will start to work with medical schools in Thailand to launch both clinical trials and research in our cohort, especially with Thailand being the representative of the APAC population. There'll be a lot of papers noting that we are trying to do gut microbiome, cytokines, and full genome sequencing mixed with our phenotypic data to come up with research for the governments here, or with medical schools here. So that's our aim for the foreseeable future for Thailand, and for abroad, we are expanding our system. We also provide other technologies like medical tourism and more forefront and as a spin-off of our current system, and allow for the fully your data. Let's say you come to Thailand, your data is synced back to you through our blockchain system as well. The security part is very core, very important to our modules. HIPAA, GDPR, PDPA is all deeply integrated throughout the system. And our system is already up, serving 2.4 million patients, and we hope to help more and more patients in both developing economies and also try to find a way to make revenue and grow and scale in the developed economy as well. So this is our plan. I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Plan, for your. It was longer than an introduction. A very interesting solution for, let's say, the empowerment of people, and you have already great results with a 30% reduction there in the costs associated. I want to now give the chance to the next person to introduce themselves. It's can you please stop your screen sharing? It's Sirish Singaram. He's the founder of, I hope I pronounce it in the correct way, Swasth. And yes. Sirish is a very impressive person. So when I read your bio, I was really impressed. So he founded his first startup already at the age of 6 years, a pet care venture. And Swasth is his second startup, and it gives affordable health services via several apps. So the stage is yours now, Sirish.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Sirish, the founder of Swasth, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here today. I hope everyone is doing well in these crazy times. It's great that we can at least catch up virtually. At Swasth, we're reimagining clinical practice and accessibility to healthcare. We're also an IIT Madras incubated company. And the biggest issues doctors face while trying to start a clinic is the cost of real estate. Real estate is so expensive, and it just does not have the reach to cover that cost, because doctors will only probably see patients from 2 or 3 localities and not further than that. And the biggest problems patients face is access to quality healthcare that's affordable. It's so difficult to find healthcare that's affordable that patients who need it the most have huge medical bills due to the high cost of healthcare. Thus, at Swasth, we've introduced this new tremendous platform known as Swasth Circles, where doctors can create their own multi-specialty cloud clinics with 5 of their colleagues from different specializations, collectively known as the Swasth Circle. Patients will then be able to search for these Swasth Circles and then subscribe to them for a small subscription fee similar to your Netflix or Amazon Prime subscription. And after which they'll be able to contact any of these 5 doctors in their circle through a chat box at any time and anywhere. And if required, they can also have a video consultation. The doctors will then be able to prescribe using our one-of-a-kind Swasth prescription, which is completely AI-based, so it shows for drug recommendations, drug interactions, and drug allergies as well. And it's also voice enabled, so you simply have to speak to the prescription and it converts speech to text into an electronic prescription. This prescription will then be directly available to patients on their chat box in the patient's local languages. So this is especially useful in the case of rural people, especially in India, where we have so many different languages. All doctors in the circle will be informed about the patient's care, and the same circle of doctors will be with the patient through the patient's lifetime. So it's similar to having a pocket-sized hospital in their phone. In the case patients need to visit the doctors directly, they can also book an appointment directly from our app and can make payments electronically and be entitled to a priority appointment in the doctor's clinic. Swasth Circle has the potential to create a virtual ecosystem like Uber or Airbnb, where we have a virtual ecosystem of doctors, labs, and pharmacies. Everything will be online. And if patients need to be seen in person, we can also have smaller, tangible inpatient setup with only an inpatient department. So Swasth Circle will be a very helpful tool in integrating brick and mortar presence with a tech-enabled offering. In the post-COVID world, any patient that has Swasth Circle will always have a network of doctors to speak to on their phone, anytime and anywhere. They don't need to worry about searching for doctors or going to clinics for a majority of their issues. This will help in reducing the lines in outpatient waiting rooms, and as a result will lead to an increase in the number of beds in hospitals. Patients will also be able to speak to these doctors when they have questions or queries or concerns, and these doctors will immediately be able to refer them to specialists within their own circle. It'll help patients save a lot of time and money. Virtual healthcare will also be especially useful in the case of preventive healthcare, and for those trivial issues where patients usually neglect due to the lack of time, which will definitely help reduce the stress in the overall healthcare system. So Swasth Circle is doing some incredible work in the ground level, and it's really saving patients a lot of time and money, and as a result, giving access to thousands and thousands of people. Yeah, thank you. I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Sirish, for your presentation. And now I want to. There was a question if you have slides, but you had no slides, so I just typed it in the. So this was completely correct. Thank you very much for your introduction. And now I want to introduce you to Dr. Jootar. He's the founder and CEO of More Corporation, founded in 2009. It's a tech consulting firm based in Thailand, and he will tell us now more what he's doing.
Hi, my name is Jootar, CEO of More Corporation, and our company builds healthcare for the healthcare sector, including the medical schools, private hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, and health foundations. And solution we build include the whole HAS as well as individual modules and mobile platform, telemedicine, and big data and analytics. We first built our first telemedicine platform more than 5 years ago. I have to say we didn't see much adoption since then, but since COVID, we have seen an uptake of the usage of telemedicine. And so that's kind of an important trend. Having done that, first I have to say that I think, to me at least, it makes more sense to think about digital health as a whole, which includes telemedicine and also other tech applied to healthcare. Simply because they usually go together as a package. Things like remote monitoring, algorithmic booking, scheduling, personalized health content, and so on. So, you might say that virtual health also includes these things, but when people hear virtual health, they usually think about telemedicine alone. So I prefer to use the term digital health instead. From my experience, I think it's easier to think about how to apply digital health in the context of specialties rather than generic services. And this is because when you think about the context of specialties, you can see a clearer picture of the patient journey along the clinical pathways. And digital health will not happen the Amazon way, in which they sell books the same way as they sell other products, because clinical specialties require different workflow, and digital health needs to be tailored for each specialties to be effective. An example of clinical specialties that can benefit from digital health include things like chronic diseases, pediatrics, psychiatry, physical therapy, oncology, even post-op follow-up can benefit from the digital health. And when you think in the context of clinical specialties, because you see steps along the treatment, you see when it makes sense to apply virtual healthcare and other digital health technology. You don't apply it broadly or randomly. So let's talk about diabetes patient. You don't apply telemedicine for diabetes patient, all the time, right? Sometimes it makes more sense for them to come to the hospital. So when it's time to do a comprehensive lab test, yes, you can do it at home, but usually it's cleaner and safer to do it at a hospital. In some visit, it makes sense to do it via telemedicine, like when you do a regular checkups, so you don't have to come to the hospitals. You can save traveling time. You can talk to the doctor via telemedicine. That makes sense. Sometimes you should do remote monitoring or leverage IoT technology, like sending glucometer readings to the doctors every time the patient pricks their finger. This way, the patient doesn't have to fake being healthy, right? Many people do that. Suddenly they eat very healthy right before they come to see the doctor. Now they don't have to because the doc see all the data, all the glucose data. Sometimes it also makes sense for you to select appropriate content personalized to that particular patient in that conditions, how they should eat, how they should exercise, how they should keep stress level down, so on. Content is usually underrated in the digital health context, but I think it's as important as medicine. So there are a lot of opportunities here. So I have to remind you that all these techniques are not new. I mean, we've seen it used for a long time. So the key is not to introduce new technology, but how to weave them together. And the key is to understand the patient journey. And you can only do that in the context of particular diseases and their clinical pathways, not a generic service. And in this fashion, digital health can save a lot of time for patients and encourage constant communications between patient and caregivers. So in summary, I think my key point is we should start with a deep understanding of the clinical pathways of the specialties we target. And only after we understand that should we start thinking about how we apply technology, where you can add telemedicine when it makes sense, where you can facilitate the flow of information using IoT, where you can send information that can be useful for the treatment, and when you can apply big data analytics. If you cannot apply digital health in a meaningful way for patients and clinicians, if you take a shotgun approach and just throw telemedicine everything to everything you can think of, virtual health will come and go with COVID. It will fade away after the pandemic goes. But if you can create a better experience which fits certain diseases, certain specialties, I think it will last and will transform the healthcare afterwards. That's what I think, and I hope we can do that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jay. So this was already a wonderful statement also for our discussion. So you already started into our discussion, but we will have two more introductions first. So the next one is Sajit Kumar. He is the Director of IT of AstraZeneca, and he is responsible for around 100 IT systems and 400 team members in AstraZeneca. And everyone knows AstraZeneca, a global biopharmaceutical player with medicines used by millions of patients. And you are also leading AstraZeneca's activities in startups incubation. So now we are looking forward to your introduction. Sajid, you also have no presentation because I'm receiving a lot of requests in the chat. So you are also doing it without slides.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dr. Sonja. I think we should give all the presentation and the airtime to all these young startups who are coming up with brilliant ideas, right? I think I would rather talk less and let them do all the talking. I'm pretty excited to see all the great idea that has been brought forward and very futuristic ideas that perhaps got accelerated because of pandemic. But great presentation so far and fantastic experience. To introduce myself, as you did most part of it, my name is Sajit Kumar from AstraZeneca. I'm part of the Global Technology Center in Chennai, in India. And AstraZeneca, I'm sure most of you must be familiar with. It's a pharmaceutical company with worldwide presence, with a specific focus on 3 therapeutic areas being oncology, CVRM, and respiratory and immunology, right? And in terms of my responsibility, as you said, Dr. Sonja, I'm part of the IT team and responsible for supporting the IT systems which are used in the commercial space. We pretty much my customer base is all the users in the commercial department. And apart from this day job, I'm pretty passionate and I'm also involved. I'm working very closely with IIT Madras in the space of forging more partnership with, nurture the industry, academia, and the startup partnership, and making sure that we are able to do our bit to help the startups of the likes of Swasth and all those names that we heard. They're doing a great job, and I get a lot of energy and a lot of motivation listening to all these startup stories. And myself and my organization and IIT Madras is working very closely to identify such startup ideas and catch them very young and see what we can do to help them achieve the goal. Obviously, the advantage that AstraZeneca brings on the board is that we definitely have a global presence and a very rich domain experience. And we are seeing how we can help all these startups by encouraging them and nurturing them, and wherever possible, mentor them in their own world journey.
Thank you very much, Sajid. So we will learn also more in the discussion later. Thank you very much for your introduction. We have one more, Dr. Naiyavud Wongkomet. He will have 3 slides. Co-founder and Chief Operating Officer of Silicon Craft Technology. He graduated in electrical engineering from the Chulalongkorn University in Bangkok and University of California at Berkeley. And in 2002, he founded the Silicon Craft Technology. And we are looking forward now to your presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Sonja. Let me put up the screen.
At the moment, we don't have it.
Okay, so. Hold on.
Yes, but now, okay, it's working.
Okay.
Maybe in presentation mode?
Yes,
Yeah,
can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So My background and also our company might be a bit different. We are from the electronic side and also from we are also component maker. We design and sell the microchips, and we started in 2002. We focused on the type of microchip called RFID, but in the recent years, RFID evolved and it has become NFC. So then I'll tell you more about it, but this is more like components and electronic side, and then I'd like to share how we move from the electronic industry into the medical areas. So let's start from NFC. It stands for Near Field Communication. It's a feature in most of the new mobile phone. So let's say that I think all of the new mobile phone above $100 should have these features. So think of NFC as when, let's say, when you enter a building with a card key, or when you go to use a train and you use a card to enter the train station. So those are the RFID card. And the NFC is the evolution of the RFID card, in which your mobile phone can act as a reader to read a card, or the mobile phone can also act as a card for payment. Right? So the way we're using the NFC is that we attach a sensor to an NFC chip. For example, you can look at on the right side, you see that there's a mobile phone and there's a card that looks like a credit card. But in that card is, so two things here. So first thing, the phone with NFC feature can read this card. And on the card, we add a sensor together with our RFID chips. And that sensor is what we think is the evolution of mobile phone and also with telemedicine. So we can add any sensors that give out electrical signal, and the two can work together and relay the signal or the measurement parameters to the phone. So let's move on to the next slide. So what we envision is that the phone becomes the gateway of your digital health, of your medical data, in which you can choose any kinds of sensors and read by your mobile phone, and you can translate or interpret the result using application on your phone, or maybe using the system on the cloud. So for example, the parameters are things that you can read with your phone. It can be things related to healthcare, related to food or environmental, as you can see on the left side. Okay. And now today we talk about the healthcare. So for example, sensors that are in development. And by the way, I'd like to explain that we are chips manufacturers. So we make the chips, but we work with sensor developer worldwide to develop sensors to work with our chips. For example, it can be the CD or NCD disease. It can be the health parameters. It can be signals such as ECG. It can be the heavy metal in food. And for example, that work that we are doing in Thailand with Chulalongkorn University, we are looking at developing the sensors for hepatitis B and C, and also for leptospirosis. So these are examples of what we see as the future of mobile phone as the POCT, right, the gateway of measuring your health parameters. Okay, so I'll just leave it at that then. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Naiyavud. So I have some issues here with my muting. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think this is already a good start into our discussion, because you said the phone will be the gateway to digital health. So I think that's one real trend in virtual healthcare. So which other trends do you see that are important? We also heard about the personalization and so meaningful ways of personalization in the clinical pathway. So that's one topic Jay has added. So are there more topics you want to, let's say, to make the picture, to have a full picture on the recent trends in virtual healthcare? Who wants to start?
I would say one thing that is missing from discussion is the use of machine learning to help basically garner insights into the data that have been collected in the EMR. And we see a lot of people are trying to do that. It's very challenging, but I think it's going to bear fruits sometime in the future, and we can all benefit from that.
Yeah, right. We have this artificial intelligence topic.
Right.
We haven't talked about this. So we see also on the startup side, we see a lot of startups. Some are working with sensors, maybe the others not. It's just pure apps. They work with health information and data, but a lot of data analytics and artificial intelligence and also digital twins are coming up. So yes, this is a really, really, really important topic. And any more topics you see that are important to consider?
So I think even the amount of teleconsultations we have undertaken using our app, we've seen many patients feel that they don't have the touch with doctors. And they feel like, okay, they're not connected with their doctors because it's through a phone and they don't have the personalized feel with doctors. So I think AR and VR also has a big role to be played here. Because let's say they can't go to a clinic, we can always have an AR set up in your house itself, and as if a doctor is right opposite you and speaking to you. So I think that's the future we're looking at, not just the telemedicine setup using your phone, but AR and VR has a huge role to play as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And Clea, also you also added one important point. We also had in our discussion, Clea, if there is a lot of data in the game, so who owns this data? Will there be in the future some data donation app models like this organ donation topic? So we have a lot of discussion also going on there. So yeah.
I think one topic from my side that I'd be interested in hearing kind of the other panelists touch on is more on the business and commercial side. So how have you guys seen kind of the path to market access or commercialization change and evolve over time as it relates to virtual health and digital health? I think traditionally this has been one of the biggest, I guess, question marks or challenges for digital health companies, particularly startups. With COVID, I think that telehealth specifically got a little bit of a boost, particularly in the Western world or in the US, where after COVID, we were able to kind of get reimbursed at the same rate as traditional office visits, and some of the regulations around cross-state visits was sort of lifted, and that sort of helped accelerate the path to market. But I would love to hear how that's going in other markets as well.
Yeah, so if I can take it, yeah. So let me try and take this question, if that's okay, Dr. Sonja. So, it's interesting, right? So when this pandemic set in, there were a lot of relaxation of the rules obviously for the right reason, right? But then, if you're talking about US context, so I was talking about US, right? So the HIPAA rules were kind of diluted, and the reimbursement rules were much more made, flexible. But I mean, there is always, we know that we are seeing the end of pandemic in sight, and we don't see that this is not going to be the end state, right? So, and at the same time, this also opened up a lot of avenues, saying that, look, there was actually a scope for diluting some of the rules, but we definitely cannot take to other extreme. There is always a privacy concern. There are still few, things that are still not okay. So my prediction is that the truth is somewhere in between, right? We may not continue the same liberal regime after the pandemic, but we may not go back to the earlier. I think somewhere in between, they might strike a balance. And I think the next few months or quarters are going to be, a kind of a negotiation and trying out where do we strike that right balance between privacy versus, if I can say the word, open science. Somewhere, that equilibrium will be determined.
Regarding to privacy, I believe that there are incoming technologies that we can use to be more transparent about like how we use patients' health data. So because at the end of the day, using these data without PHI or PII and removing of the sensitive health data would be quite important to aggregate enough data for things like machine learning and medical research. But we can also do things like federated machine learning as well, where we put the machine learning models at the patients and so on. So I think like that these technologies can be used in cohort with the incoming mixed case of legal process or legal framework of each country as well.
One thing I want to add in terms of commercialization of digital health is that I think the challenge of digital health is that most diseases cannot be served by pure digital. It's different from the e-commerce world where you can just buy things online. But even for the e-commerce world, we see that people talk about omni-channel, basically offering both online and offline at the same time by the same company. But I think for digital health company, I don't think you can wait for that. I think we need to think about the offline experience at the same time as the digital experience, because I think it's very limited if you only focus on pure digital experience.
Thank you very much for this point. I think so as well. Maybe we have to even take over some of the wordings we use if we talk about digital and physical experiences, and maybe we will have a seamless hybrid experience that at the end you get the best service, and it's a mix of, let's say, non-digital and digital services there.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I believe the use of POCT in cohorts with things like more of a experiential VR or telemedicine and so on will be very key to that as well, to unlock that in the incoming futures.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. And I'm saying, Dr. Sonja, it's something got me thinking. The moment you said, do we have an opportunity to, to the idea of what Plan was talking about, so his company is focused on giving the data back to the patient, right? So this idea of data donation sounds very interesting, right? Similar to organ donation, can we have a campaign for data donation? And a question probably I can ask this to Plan is that, do you see an opportunity for the patient, while patient owns his or her data, can they even look at commercializing it? Can I sell my data for a cost, right? And especially in some of the developing economy, I think there's an opportunity to fund some of the treatment expense if I'm able to be signing up for data donation. Is that something that has come into your attention?
Yes, sir. So I think like per GDPR and per PDPA, which is direct subsidiary of GDPR, that is something that if patients give consent to it, we can do that for sure. And I think that's a really good idea. So one point that we have to take notice on is basically how do we educate patients enough to know that what they are doing is what was the full details of the full entailments of what they're trying to commercialize. And I think that would be a question giving to the developing economies. But I think that is doable. And if we pass that hurdle, then this can happen as well.
Absolutely. Interesting.
Yeah, I think we are just at the beginning of such models of data donation, but it's quite interesting. So some of the insurance companies have already started there. So like Generali, I have in mind, and also some others. Yeah. So I don't want to, let's say now, just mention one. I think it will be a very interesting topic for the next 5 years, because if we think about where do we see each other in 5 years going from here, we are sure that there will be some models in place, how to handle the data topic and how to give ownership of the data also back to the patients. I have so do you have topics where you think this is in 5 years will be completely different from what we have today?
I think like going with the adoption of more of a patient-based healthcare or self-sovereignty in patients' health data, I do see that there will be more voice of concern in the Western countries when they develop economies, but in developing economies such as like Thailand, it could be a challenge to get the knowledge regarding to piracy up to that level in 5 years. But I do see it's coming from the US, UK, Europe, and those countries.
But one thing I hope will happen in the future, I don't know if it's going to happen, but I hope it's going to happen, is that patients become more educated about the medicine and basically try to seek information to help them understand their diseases better and find the right doctors. We have to say that most of the medicine knowledge that we hear today are only the kind of the majority view. There are many views that are minority and don't get known in the public. So I think that is important areas that I hope will happen with the digital technology.
Yeah, just to add to that, I would agree with Jay that I think that digital technology, one of the biggest impacts that it has on sort of the overall patient experience is really empowering the patient to kind of take control of their own healthcare. I also think that we are slowly moving from a very reactive healthcare system to one that's more proactive and preventative. So when you have technology, starting with the most basic thing of telemedicine, but sort of slowly moving towards incorporating things like remote monitoring tools, personalized and precision medicine, et cetera. We're sort of getting to a place where instead of us as patients waiting until we get sick, and not just get sick, but until to the point where we have no other option but to go to the doctor, to then receive care, we can sort of have more ongoing monitoring and proactive interventions take place to prevent the worsening of our outcomes before that even happens. So I think technology is really kind of the biggest catalyst for shifting the paradigm in healthcare towards preventative care.
Yes, Sona, I think that's a really, really important point, that we shift to prevention, also to predictive medicine. So we can also see, let's say it started in diabetes and maybe also with some, let's say, heart rate, frequency, whatever. So with some first tools, but if all the diabetes patients will have their data, if they know exactly how every food they take, how sports will change their parameters, this will also change their, let's say, they have more information about their own vital circumstances, and then they can really adapt also then better. So it's then also more customized. So instead of pricking me 10 times a day in my finger, I get 100 times I can get my diabetes parameters, so the blood sugar, and then I have more opportunities and more information to act. So thank you very much for this. We are now we just have some time left, and we haven't talked about COVID. Also here in Germany, we were shortly before the next really very let's say serious lockdown. So we are just allowed to celebrate Christmas with let's say one other household. So, and that's it. So I can see my mother or my father. I can think about this. But what will be, let's say, also the new normal after the COVID pandemic? So it's really nice to think about that it could be over at some time, yeah, because at the moment we are still deeply in. But what is, let's say, the also for virtual healthcare? So after the pandemic, so are there any specific topics? Or I'm sure there are many. So this is a question now to you all.
One thing I hope to see is that, as we talk about the patient educating themselves about the health and medicine, I hope to see that there's some startup taking on content platforms specifically for healthcare. I think the current platform, the business model, Facebook, YouTube, it all target the mass advertisement. So I think it's not very suited for the medical kind of content. We see a lot of lectures and medical oriented content on YouTube, but I think startup with good technology can do much more than that, and that would help people learn more about their bodies.
Mm-hmm. So
if
better,
I can,
did I understand correctly? Better, let's say, information services on a broad basis, right?
Yeah, like content platform that is
Content
targeted more to disseminate
more
the medical
educated.
knowledge. Yeah,
Mhm.
more
Okay.
to disseminating the medical knowledge.
Mhm.
Just have an idea that with the adoption of digital health, and then we can have our own medical data. Do we think that maybe there'll be a Facebook version of preventive healthcare in which the company might offer free or reduced service to us in exchange for the data, and they will give us ads or promote certain other service? So in one way, that we look at privacy, but on the other hand, there might be some company that that offer free service for our data.
Right. I think the key is the business model. I think technology is there, but what's the right business model that can make this work? Yeah. What you said is one example of business model.
Mm-hmm.
Going by that, we have the legal framework to consider as well, which per se, like going by GDPR-based law, like if you give full consent, then that is possible. So the next question would be like, how do we educate patients enough for them to know what they are signing up for? This will also be really important as well, which raises another ethical concern that for developing economies where the education level may not reach a level of discernment of whether they can actually sign up for or what they're signing up for, this raised some concern on this part as well. And going back to the COVID part for a bit, regarding to health data connectivity between hospital, I think this will be another challenge to tackle as well, because a lot of the marker for COVID or like the holistic care point of view for COVID cases can actually, or even population health management views of COVID can actually be done to help control or curb each region of COVID rising up, or each specific geo area of COVID, and so on and so forth as well, or triaging on COVID cases. And right now, there's not a lot of healthcare interconnectivity at all in the US, in Thailand, and a lot of different places. If there's a healthcare connectivity, we can do a lot of things with the technologies we have. AI models on knowledge graph, doing contact tracing based on the big data set, population data set, and so on. So I believe that healthcare connectivity have to be ramped up, seeing these COVID cases as well.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think the interconnectivity is and the connectivity is a really, really, really important topic also for, let's say, those seamless experiences I have talked about before. So I also want to give now the chance to all to our audience. Are there any questions to our panel members? If yes, please type it in our chat. Just let us know, and we will go ahead with the discussion. And I will check the chat from time to time. So if there are any questions, then I will include this in our discussion. So
already questions in the Q&A, not the chat. It'll be on the Q&A. They can't access chat. Look, there's a question in the Q&A.
In the Q&A, wait a minute, I see, okay. So we have a question of Gaurav Yadav. What factors impact adoption of telemedicine and virtual software platforms during and after COVID-19 pandemic? Who wants to answer?
So if I can go, I'll try, and maybe others can jump in, right? Obviously, as I said some time back, this is definitely going to, I mean, telemedicine or the virtual healthcare is going to stay. But what are the specific factors that is going to influence this adoption? Obviously, the technology is a key element, right? With the 4G connection, 5G connection, and the edge computing, all of that definitely adds. It will definitely accelerate the adoption of telemedicine. And of course, the population is also much more digital savvy, right? Obviously, the COVID has forced many of us into digital world, and that education also helped a lot in terms of better usability, better understanding of the technology. And finally, and most importantly, the regulation and the reimbursement structure that we spoke about, in terms of how the governmental policy, especially in certain part of the world, the reimbursement policy plays a very big role in adoption of telemedicine or such virtual backgrounds. I'm sure others will have more to add to that.
Yeah, from my experience, I think telemedicine, the benefit is clearly on the patient side because it saves them time to come to the hospital. It's usually the staff and caregivers who might have to do something extra to make sure that they can deliver that experience. So I think the key to adoption is to make sure that you create a system that doesn't create too much work for the caregivers and even save them time if necessary. So that's what my experience is.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think you had mentioned, Jay, earlier in the conversation that managing most diseases is a combination, will never be purely digital. There will always have to be some level of in-person care and in-person services. So I think the future, the success of telemedicine is also going to depend on how well organizations can create that seamless patient experience, tying together the digital sort of engagement with the clinician with some of those in-person, more analog experiences with the care system. All of that needs to be seamlessly integrated into one sort of cohesive experience for telemedicine to really, truly achieve its potential long term.
Thank you very much, and I think really one of the important points is also to help healthcare professionals like doctors and clinicians, but also patients to adopt, let's say, digital and also, like I said before, hybrid models here. So do you have any ideas besides, let's say, the easy to use, seamless experiences? So are there any more points? Reimbursement we had before. So let's say it's highly dependent if patients get reimbursed also those digital services. Are there any more points you want to add?
I believe that it has to come in tranche as well. We should start from, as Dr. Jay mentioned before, things like NCD or orthopedics, where patients just come in for like drugs or like every 3 months, and that's the bare minimum of the period of wait. And basically, if you just focus on this area of focus first, it'll be a way easier transit rather than like trying to replace all the visitation with this new OPD telemedicine models.
In other words, I think the killer app, we need to find a killer app for the telemedicine. I think COVID only promotes the use, but I think the killer app is still, I think the jury is still out. What is the killer app? What diseases? What kind of treatments? I think NCD is one of the top candidates, I think.
Yeah, I think so as well. NCDs and are a top candidate here, and we have now come to, let's say, we have now discussed a lot of different aspects of virtual healthcare, and we have now, because the next speaker is already waiting in the waiting room, I just heard, so this is why I want to thank now every one of you for a great discussion. We could thank a big thank you especially to our speakers, Sona, Plan, Sirish, Jay, Sajit, and Naiyavud. So thank you very much for joining our discussion. And I also want to thank the Medical Fair Asia team and also Mutu Singaram for organizing this great session at the startup podium. And I think you can get in touch with all of us. So via, I don't know if you are all in LinkedIn. So that's our usual platform. And we are looking forward to meeting you all 2021, hopefully in person at Medical Fair Asia in Thailand. And stay safe and healthy. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sonja, and thank you all the speakers. It was a great session. Sorry, I have to end it because they have to follow the sequence. So thank you very much. We will be here until next Friday. So just log in whenever you can. Monday to Friday, we have sessions. So support the other speakers as well. Thank you very much and take care and stay safe. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.